Hi friends, today we're talking about a highly requested subject and one of the coolest, if not the coolest things in the entire setting. We're talking about dreadnoughts, baby! Whoa! Dreadnoughts are technically 40k's take on mechs, before the Titans and Knights brought on a more traditional take on mechs. And these dudes are perhaps the most 40k way to do a mech. Half-dead super soldier, permanently interred in a literal coffin with legs, armed to the teeth with the biggest guns a tech priest can find. Badass. Dreadnoughts are ancient war machines that ravage anything foolish enough to get in its way, scything down foes with their heavy guns, before savagely razing all that remains with his power fist and sheer bulk. So, if that sounds cool to you, stay tuned. But first, let me talk about today's sponsor, Tabletop Stronghold. Tabletop Stronghold is a long supporter of the channel, and their signature Magcase 2.0 is super strong, able to hold 250 pounds, has a ton of space thanks to its convenient swappable steel trays, and keeps your mini safe with the power of magnets, making it one of the best, if not the best, ways to keep your mini safe. But, speaking of capacity, let's loop back to the three sizes. There's the Classic, the Mini, and the XL. The Classic is the perfect all-rounder. It's great for 40k, very comfortably fitting a 2k army. The XL is humongo, and is basically two mag cases mushed together, so it's the Stormbolter of mag cases. Badass. And finally, the Mini is the miniest way to hold your minis. But even here, it's surprisingly spacious and can even hold a 2k army if you really optimize your space. But its true forte is skirmish games. It's perfect for holding my minis for the best game ever, Relic Blade. But for the best value, check out the Mag Case and Terrain Bundle. And, best of all, they're running an Independence Day sale right now. So, make like a good American and buy! And as always, there's free shipping to the US, Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. So get yourself a Magcase 2.0 today. Anyways though, dreadnoughts are ancient war machines dating back to the days of the Great Crusade. In fact, some dreadnoughts from that era are still in use in the 41st millennium. The methods of making new dreadnoughts have largely been lost. At least they used to. As such, dreadnought chassis are treated as sacred relics. A sacred relic that just so happens to have the firepower to rival a tank. Honored heroes of the chapter are interred into dreadnoughts if they sustained grievous wounds that cannot be healed. Marines deemed worthy are given new life in dreadnoughts through sacred rituals performed by the chapter's tech marines and apothecaries. Dreadnoughts are said to be a living embodiment of the machine spirit, as it's a perfect fusion of machine and man into a walk-in death box. Thus, these rituals interface the Marine to the Dreadnought in order to sync the Marine's mind to his new mechanical body. The Marine is permanently hooked up in a specialized sarcophagus filled with amniotic fluid that's basically Evangelion LCL in that it helps the Marine's mind sync to the Dread. In addition, the amniotic fluid is part of the Dreadnought's sophisticated life support systems. Once interred, the Marine's mind connects with the Dreadnought sensors in order to perceive the world outside the sarcophagus. Due to this perfect sync, the Marine feels the Dreadnought as if it's his own body, and Dreadnoughts have been known to have surprising agility and dexterity for their size and bulk. Its movement is quite natural, being more akin to a living being than a true machine. And, fun little fact, the Dreadnought systems are advanced enough to detect its Marine's thoughts and emotions. It then translates these to the system's speakers and servos, meaning that Dreadnoughts sound close to the Marine and retains many of his mannerisms. So, keep in mind, Dreadnoughts are essentially living metal beasts. After all, it still has the mind of an organic being, just interred in a metal form. This also makes interacting with Dreadnoughts very uncanny and eerie to most people. And beyond making dinner parties awkward, being a Dreadnought has some other notable downside. Being perfectly synced with the Dreadnought's sophisticated systems takes its toll on even the advanced minds of the transhuman space marines. Although the Dreadnought can greatly extend a marine's already augmented lifespan, over time, the marine's mind begins to slip as their grasp of reality wanes. So, tech marines typically put Dreadnoughts into special stasis chambers in order to preserve the marine within, as well as their vast wisdom. And the longer they're in the Dreadnought, the longer they must rest in between deployments. But when they're needed most, Dreadnoughts are hit with the Rune of Awakening and get to killing. But, speaking of killing, let's get to what everyone came here for. Dreadnoughts are death incarnate and absolute monsters on the battlefield. Dreadnoughts have electromotivated fiber bundle muscles and magnet coils that give them unparalleled strength for their size. This allows them to easily tear through even the strongest armors with destructive melee weapons like power fists, assault drills, humongo power weapons, or even just a mighty stomp. This super strength also comes in handy since they can hold giant weapons, even more gianter than the giant weapons Marines usually tote around. Some popular weapons are giant plasma cannons, twin las cannons, multi-meltas, rocket pods, and my favorite of all, the ultra badass assault cannon. And along with their main gun, they have some auxiliary weapon systems in the form of storm bolters, heavy flamers, grenade launchers, and more, depending on the pattern. And thanks to their enhanced strength, advanced sensors, and nitrogen cooling systems, they're able to fire their weapon systems with far greater stability, mobility, and reliability than regular Space Marines. And defensively, they're no slouch either. They're fitted with thick adamantine and ceramite armor, allowing them to take severe punishment as they tear through enemy ranks. In addition, they also have smoke launchers to obscure their advance, and if you're really cool, you can take a giant storm shield to complement your badass giant frost axe. And due to the potent life support capabilities of the Dreadnought, they're also extremely hard to kill even if you get through the armor. The only surefire way to take one out is to destroy the sarcophagus, but that's easier said than done. In the unlikely case that you do kill a Dreadnought though, its chapter will go through extensive lengths in order to recover the remains, both to honor their venerable brother and to get the Dreadnought back in hopes of restoring it for the next Marine. But a Dreadnought's ferocious combat prowess may not even be its most remarkable feature. Dreadnoughts are often the oldest ancients of the chapter, both due to life-extending systems and the fact that those who get turned to Dreadnoughts are often already veterans of many battles. As such, Dreadnoughts are among the wisest of the chapter and keepers of the chapter's history. Outside of battle, the other times Dreadnoughts are awoken is when the chapter seeks counsel or knowledge. Venerable Dreadnoughts give advice to younger Marines, provide tactical expertise, and tell tales of the chapter's history, as well as ensuring that chapter records are correct. And with all that being said, basically throw everything out the window other than they kill real good, because Primaris, baby! Dreadnoughts have a ton of different patterns befitting different roles. However, the Primaris Redemptor pattern Dreadnoughts are almost an entirely different thing. Unlike Dreadnoughts of old, the Redemptor's STCs are readily available, and the Marines being interred into one of these bad boys is not just reserved for special honored Marines. You see, Marines and Redemptor Dreads are treated like Crypto Bros GPUs in that they're overclocked to the max in order to wreak maximum havoc on the environment. Except in the Redemptor's case, it's to wreak maximum havoc on the heretic, as well as the environment. So, Redemptor Marines are treated like yet another disposable component. This dread pattern is immensely powerful, but this power comes at the cost of literally burning out the Marine within. Kinda similar to how being hooked up to a normal Dreadnought makes a Marine slowly lose their mind, the Redemptor literally sucks the life energy out of the Marine and fries their organs with the sheer mind power needed to operate the machine. Marines who fight for a sustained time as a Redemptor quickly die and have their organs literally turn to evil black ooze. These Dreadnoughts are not revered ancients, they are wholly disposable weapons with the sole purpose of annihilation. And, call the Wrecker repair store, cause I don't really like this Primaris thing. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of a pattern of Dreadnought that burns out the user for sheer power, and the Redemptor in Space Marine 2 is like the coolest dude ever, but I think it's a lot more interesting of a concept that Dreadnoughts are some of the most powerful things at a chapter's disposal, but must be used sparingly because they're irreplaceable as both a relic and link to the chapter's past. And now with Primaris, they're yet another mass-producible war machine that you can throw at any battle with minimal risk of losing anything too valuable. To me, this is yet another symptom of the trend of 40k becoming more basic sci-fi and no longer really being a setting of decay on any level that really matters, but I've complained about that many times before. I think the idea of the Redemptor can work if it's a rare/taboo pattern that scarcely gets used since the regular Dread is more respectable, so they only use it in emergency circumstances. However, I can totally see the Redemptor fully replacing the regular Dread. They basically already have. Although to be fair, GW has been more open to faithful updates in recent times. I think the land speeder looks really great, for example, but who knows? Also, I hate the legs. Literally just changed to make dreadnoughts look more like a normal mech. I think the shorter legs were super cool and an iconic look that made them a very unique mech design. And finally, I think they're just way too huge. I think the default dread literally being just the size of a coffin with legs and guns strapped to it was a lot cooler conceptually than the orc logic of, big good. I think the truly giant dreads are best served as special patterns rather than default guys running around. And again, all this isn't to say I hate the Redemptors though. Big Robot Man is always going to be cool, but I think they're just so much more basic than the classic Dread. And I don't know, subjectively they feel less 40k to me. But to close this off, other factions also have their versions of dreadnoughts. Chaos ones are literally the same thing with spikes. However, they do often have chaos corruption that even more literally melts the organic marine with the mechanical dread. Or death dreads are also very similar, being mutilated orcs and turned into dreadnoughts. Eldars are a bit weirder with their Wraith units being Eldar souls put into Wraithbone bodies. Tau are kind of similar to the Eldar ones in that they have engram piloted battle suits. However, I'd argue that a mind copy is different from a soul, but let's not get into philosophy. And other factions don't really have dreadnought equivalents to my knowledge, but feel free to correct me. And with that, those are the dreadnoughts. I think dreadnoughts are definitely one of the coolest vehicles in Warhammer. It's hard not to like a big robot with big gun, especially when it's a wacky coffin robot with a Gatling gun punching the shit out of some tanks and demons. In the future, I'll make a companion video going over the various dreadnought patterns, as well as probably talking about Wraith Knights and stuff like that, since I really like Wraith Knights. But for today, that's all I've got. So let me know what you think about dreads and comment below what your favorite pattern is. Anyways, thank you for watching and thank you to all my awesome Patreons. I really appreciate your support and I couldn't thank you enough. And as always, please like, comment, subscribe, and consider sharing to all your big old dreadnought buddies. Thanks. Also, we all say that dreadnoughts are mechs, but wouldn't they technically be cyborgs?